Well, the fact is this, rolling blackouts have never been this bad. Eskom implementing stage 6 from midday today. It says this is due to the high number of breakdowns as well as the requirement to strictly preserve the remaining energy generation reserves. Let's put things in perspective. It's been the worst year in terms of blackouts. There you can see 120 days. That's a load shedding days. According to the App Eskom Se Push, that means it's more than double what we saw last year. The intensity of the power cuts is also much worse. Last year we saw stage 4, but this is the third time in 2022 that we are enduring stage 6, and there have been many days of stage 5 as well. There has also been huge volatility in recent days, with Eskom saying it would implement stage 2 and 3 cuts yesterday and today, then a move to stage 4 this morning and stage 6 by midday, suggesting a lack of predictability. Stage 6 means that 6,000 megawatts of capacity is not available. It translates into 10 hours of blackouts, according to some schedules per day. All right, to discuss, we're joined by Professor Mark Swilling, who's a National Planning Commissioner member. He's also the co-director of the Centre for Sustainability Transitions at Stellenbosch. Thank you for being with us, Professor. You've said before 2 billion is lost per day at stage 4. So stage 6, the cost is certainly very, very high.
The cost is extremely high for the economy. We're losing jobs, we're losing investment, we're losing confidence, and that is made worse by the proposed 38% increase in tariffs that has been announced.
Yeah, that's a huge irony. Eskom, despite the woes, wants to charge more money, and it's all part of the problem, that it's not recouping enough to do the maintenance, to keep the lights on. It has a huge debt burden. Is there any chance we could see our energy costs going up by that much?
Well, it's up to NERSA, the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, to approve the tariffs. But the problem is that over many, many years, NERSA has refused to approve the cost-reflective tariffs that Eskom has proposed. So tariffs have increased rather slowly over time compared to the cost of running Eskom as a business. And so Eskom has become a lot more aggressive and is challenging NERSA in the courts to say, we need these tariffs these tariff increases in order to keep the business viable. But this is the consequences of catch-up. At the same time, Eskom has huge problems with the maintenance of the power stations, which were neglected for a very long time prior to the current management team. And so it's also catch up to keep them going, fix them when they can, but under conditions where they don't have enough money to really do the maintenance properly.
Well, what do you think NERSA should do? Because like you say, it's always been reluctant to give whopping increases. And I guess the understanding is that maybe customers shouldn't pay for the past mistakes, but the money has to come from somewhere. What do you think NERSA should do?
Well, the money does have to come from somewhere. It either comes from the people who buy electricity, you and me, or it comes from the fiscus via capital injections of the kind that we've seen in previous years. There is also the real problem of the debt. So a lot of the inefficiencies and corruption have translated into this mountain of debt, around 400 billion. And Eskom doesn't earn enough in order to cover the debt repayments. And the Minister of Finance has said that they're considering taking over between 1/3 and 2/3. If they do something like that, like maybe half, 50%, 200 billion, that will make Eskom more viable financially.
Yeah.
But I think because of NERSA's previous reluctance to approve a steadily increasing tariffs, now we are experiencing the shocks.
Professor, is government moving quickly enough? That has been deferred, that decision on debt, till next year. It's been a hot potato for years. Pravin Gordhan, the minister, spoke about some relief around diesel after Eskom said it could no longer afford diesel. But I don't think we've had any clear direction on that either. And here we are, sitting in stage 6.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Eskom spent by October, between April and October, spent all their budget of 11 billion that they had budgeted for diesel, and basically had no money to continue to buy diesel. But as the power stations get worse and break down more often, you need more and more diesel to keep the lights on. But diesel is very expensive, takes time to arrive on the ships. You need cash to buy it, and Eskom doesn't have that cash. So when they say they're preserving their stocks, what they're saying is they've got a little bit of diesel. They don't want to burn it too much, because then they'll be facing a much more serious crisis come January.
Do you agree that the swings and the last-minute changes suggest that the grid is very volatile at the moment? In its latest statement, Eskom says stage 6 is to preserve the remaining emergency generation reserves. Are we facing a crisis here? And you've actually warned about this, that if the grid starts to fail, it'll be very hard to get things back on track.
Yes, I think we need to understand that load shedding is also partly driven by Eskom's desire to prevent a complete collapse of the energy system, of the grid. Because if that happens, it can take a minimum of 3 days, probably 5 days, to get everything back up and running. After 3 days, ATMs don't work, garages don't work. You can't get. Eventually, cell phone towers run out of batteries. Everything basically grinds to a halt, and that's a really disastrous outcome. But I think it's a bit reckless to predict that that's going to happen, because Eskom is managing the grid through load shedding to prevent that outcome. So just because we're edging up to stage 6 doesn't mean we're necessarily edging up to the collapse of the grid.
And you still have a sense that Eskom is in control, despite the very sudden changes in outlooks and the sudden changes in load shedding stages.
Listen, I think we need to appreciate the fact that Eskom has been saying for quite some time that what we face is high levels of uncertainty. They can't predict what is going to happen tomorrow. The instability of the power stations, there are 90 generation units across our 15 power stations, and it's very difficult to predict which ones are going to trip over tomorrow. There's a combination of poor maintenance, of corruption, of sabotage as well, that makes it extremely difficult to actually know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I think all South Africans need to accept, as your inserts from Eskom suggested, that at least over the next 2 years, I think over the next year, I think at least over the next 2 years, there's going to be high levels of uncertainty. We're going to be living in very difficult conditions. And I do think Eskom management is doing the best possible job under extremely, extremely difficult conditions.
Yeah, and we don't have time, but hopefully next time we can talk about those efforts to get enough power on the grid within the next 2 years. But let's end with this. I mean, where we are now, when we were talking earlier in the year about another 2 years, we weren't at stage 6. I think we had come out of that. But things could get even worse, reportedly. Eskom taking down Kuberg Unit 1 for maintenance and repairs. Apparently that'll pull more than 900 megawatts off the grid. So what does that mean? Does that mean stage 6 becomes a part of life for the next few months?
If between government, which is, as you know, is in a state of political turmoil at the moment because of the politics of the nation around the presidency and the ANC conference, but if the combination of government efforts plus efforts of the private banks and the publicly owned banks do not result in resolving Eskom's liquidity problem, in other words, the shortage of cash, that means they will not be able to buy enough diesel in order to back up the system. And that in turn could lead to permanent stage 4 to stage 6 type load shedding. They need the diesel, they need the money, and they need to keep the grid going, keep things going for the next 4 to 6 months, where a lot of diesel is required. At the same time, the good news is about 16.9 gigawatts of renewables have been procured in 2022. If just 10 of those come online within the next 2 years, we can end load shedding in 2 years.
All right, thank you for that great overview. Professor Mark Swilling, National Planning Commissioner member. And yeah, it sounds like that money for diesel was needed yesterday.